They are beautiful in a way that doesn't feel real. Endless forests, rivers that move slowly and are cold, and hills that block out the rest of the world. It's quiet enough that you can hear your own breath. People come here to disappear, sometimes by choice, sometimes not. In early fall, when the trees start turning red and gold, the air feels almost restless, like it knows something is wrong before anyone else does. That's when the locals started talking about him. They didn't know his real name, so they called him Robin Hood. At first, it sounded harmless, even strange. Someone sneaking around the hills at night, leaving money at the doors of people who needed it most. A single mother struggling to feed her kids. A man too sick to work. A family whose house was days away from being swallowed by debt. These stories spread fast, like the wind carried them from porch to porch. But they have a long memory, and around here every blessing comes with suspicion. The place is full of people who keep their heads down and mind their own business, especially when it comes to money. The towns are small and the roads are dark. Even if something terrible happened, it could take days before anyone found out. People pretend they're safe because nothing ever looks dangerous. Crime here doesn't always scream. Sometimes it steps quietly, like boots sinking into wet leaves. The story really begins near a broken-down cabin deep in the woods, old, leaning to one side with chipped paint and windows fogged from the inside. Someone had been living there, but not recently. Whoever left didn't take much, but they left something else behind, a feeling. A sudden drop in your stomach, like you're not supposed to be there. The sheriff later said there was nothing to see, but he said that too fast and without looking anyone in the eye. People had seen flashes of movement in the forest at night. A shadow, a figure too quick to follow, dogs barking at nothing, kids swearing they heard someone whispering from the tree line. The kind of things adults call imagination, but kids don't always lie. Sometimes they're the only ones paying attention. The people at the heart of this story didn't think their lives were interesting. They woke up, worked hard, and tried to stay afloat. A gas station cashier who barely slept. A young woman trying to take care of her brother after their parents were gone. A teacher who drove an hour each day because she couldn't find work anywhere else. None of them expected their names to end up in a police report. None of them thought they would be connected by something so dark. They weren't rich, they weren't powerful, but their lives mattered, and someone was watching them. Robin Hood didn't show up out of nowhere. He had been here before, he knew the land. He understood how money controlled people, the way debt crushed them slowly, the way the rich pretended not to see. He thought he was fixing things. Some even thought he was a hero. The kind that the poor only get in stories. But heroes don't hide in the woods, and they don't leave blood behind. No one knew when the first act of kindness became a warning. When money in a mailbox turned into something else. Something unsettling, a hint of control. A message, I know you, I know what you're desperate for, and I can give it to you, but not for free. Some people didn't sleep easily after that. They started locking their doors even though most never had to before. The woods, once comforting, began to feel like they had eyes. There was a moment, small, invisible, that everything could have stopped. But it didn't. The tension had already taken root, like something growing underground, silent but unstoppable. This is a story about those who thought they had nothing left to lose, and someone who thought he had the right to decide who deserved help and who deserved fear. A man who believed he was doing good, even as the darkness in him spread like rot. The truth doesn't rise fast, it sinks into the soil, but the dead don't stay buried forever. It started with small things, things people barely noticed or pretended not to. A few extra dollars left for someone who didn't need it. A broken lock on a shed that someone swore was locked the night before. Footprints leading up to someone's porch, but none leading away. Little details that felt wrong, but not wrong enough to call the police. Not yet. But unease has a way of spreading, whisper by whisper, face by face. At the local diner, people talked in lower voices. They joked at first, calling the mystery man a saint, a blessing, a strange kind of savior. But some people didn't laugh, especially the ones who knew that nothing in this world comes without a price. They had lived too long, seen too much, to believe someone would help for no reason. Not here, and not this way. One of the people who received money was a man named. He worked at a lumber yard and lived alone after his marriage fell apart. He wasn't a bad man, but he was tired, beaten down by bills and regret. When he found the envelope on his doorstep, he didn't tell anyone. He used it to pay off a loan and tried to move forward. But a week later, another envelope came, then another, and attached to the third was a note. "You owe me now." He didn't sleep after that. There was also the woman who took care of her younger brother. Their parents were gone, lost in a car crash, leaving them alone in a house they couldn't afford, worked days at a grocery store and nights cleaning motel rooms. She found her envelope tucked under the doorframe as if someone had watched her leave, then waited to place it there. She used the cash to catch up on the electric bill. She told herself it was just luck, a miracle. But every time she walked home in the dark, she felt like eyes were on her. The person they called Robin Hood didn't pick his targets randomly. He chose people who were drowning, people with nowhere else to turn, and as they accepted the money, they felt grateful at first. But gratitude can turn into fear when help becomes control. Something shifted when a woman named started talking. She was older, ran a thrift shop, and had lived in her whole life. She had seen things, quiet things, ugly things, back when the hills were even wilder. She said this wasn't the first time someone played games with the poor, not the first time someone decided who deserved help. She said she heard stories as a girl about a man in the woods who thought he could fix the world by deciding who should live better and who shouldn't. She said those stories never ended well. Nobody wanted to believe her, but some were starting to wonder. The pressure grew slowly, like heat building under a closed lid. Stopped going to work for a few days, kept the curtains closed even during the day. The sheriff commented on the gas station that people should stop taking things from strangers, but there was no law against accepting money, and no one had proof that this Robin Hood ever meant harm. Not yet. The turning point came when someone refused the money. Her name was Lydia. She was a teacher barely surviving on her paycheck, but too proud or too scared to take anything from someone she couldn't see. The envelope sat in her mailbox for 3 days before she burned it in her sink. She didn't tell anyone until after she started hearing knocks at night. Slow, deliberate, 3 short knocks, then silence. She moved a chair under her doorknob, started sleeping with a flashlight in her hand. It didn't help. Others began talking, comparing stories, connecting dots. The envelopes weren't gifts, they were hooks, and whoever left them didn't like being ignored. That's when the second note appeared. Some people don't know what's good for them, but I do. And this time it wasn't left with money. It was nailed to Lydia's front door. Now people were scared. But fear is strange. It makes some people hide and others lash out. The town started to split, those who believed Robin Hood was still helping and those who thought he was watching them like prey. Tried to tell himself he was imagining things, but the notes kept coming. Tried to explain the feeling of being watched to her brother, but he was too young to understand. He thought someone was protecting them. Then secrets began to surface. Sloan wasn't just money trouble. He owed a man with a criminal record, someone known for violence. And that man disappeared the same week, got his first envelope. His brother had been sneaking out at night, telling her he had a friend in the woods. Someone who gave him things, someone who promised to help their family forever. Lydia had been hiding something, too. She had been writing letters to the sheriff, describing strangers she thought she saw outside her house. But she never mailed them. She kept them in a drawer, reading them back, even she wasn't sure if she was losing her mind or waking up to the truth. And the truth was this: someone was choosing who to help, who to punish, and who to test. People in town started digging into the past, old reports, missing persons, strange stories that never got answers. They found references to a man 20 years ago who called himself a corrector, someone who left money for the poor and punishment for the wicked. No one ever caught him. Some said he died. Others said he simply stopped. But now it felt like he was back, or someone like him. That's when jealousy crept in. A man named Joel, who always felt overlooked, started saying Robin Hood just picked favorites. He said maybe people wanted attention from him. Maybe they asked for it. The more he talked, the angrier he got. He told others that good people were getting money while he struggled, that he deserved to be noticed. He started staying out late, wandering the woods, hoping to catch this stranger or be chosen by him. But nobody saw the man, they just felt him. The line between gift and threat got thinner every day. The sheriff, pressured by growing panic, tried to look into rumors, but rumor isn't evidence. And every time he got close to a lead, something happened. Someone backed out, someone changed their story, or something went quiet again. The silence was worse than anything. Then the boy went missing for 6 hours. Thought he was in school, but he was. When she found him, he was in the woods, sitting calmly at the base of a tree. He said someone told him not to be afraid, that everything was being taken care of. When she asked who, he just said, "The man who helps people like us." That night didn't sleep. She pushed a dresser against the door and held her brother until morning. She didn't tell the sheriff. She didn't know who to trust. Meanwhile began unraveling. He tried burning the notes he'd received, but they kept coming back. Sometimes left inside his house, even though he swore he had locked the door. He stopped going out, stopped answering the phone, started drinking again, something he swore he'd never do after losing his marriage. He wasn't scared of dying. He was scared of what he might already owe. Everyone was breaking in their own way. Because what do you do when someone helps you, but you can't refuse them? What do you do when kindness becomes a trap? The town was full of tension now. Conversations that ended suddenly when someone walked into the room. Eyes watching from windows when a car slowed down on the street. Couples fighting in whispers. Neighbors double-checking locks. And the woods, once a place kids played and hunters walked, felt like the edge of a mouth waiting to swallow someone whole. There were nights when the wind stopped and everything was still. Too still, as if the land itself was holding its breath. That's when found something on her porch. Not money, not a note. A key. Old rusted tied with a piece of twine. No explanation. Just the key. She stared at it for a long time, feeling her stomach twist. It wasn't a gift. It was an invitation or a warning. That same night, Joel came back from roaming the woods, covered in scratches, claiming he saw someone. A man standing between the trees, watching him, silent, not running, just watching. Joel said he felt chosen, like he'd passed a test. He sounded almost proud, but his eyes were wild, unfocused. Something was happening something that felt old, familiar, and wrong. The people who got money were marked. The people who refused were watched. Those who questioned him felt the pressure closing in like the walls of a fire. And somewhere out there, the man they called Robin Hood was still moving through the trees, deciding who deserved help, who deserved fear, and who would soon learn the price of being noticed. The town didn't know it yet, but the real crime hadn't even happened. Not the kind they could see. Not yet. It happened on a night when the air was too still, too thick, like even the wind was holding back. The moon was high, pale, and sharp-edged, cutting through the trees like a blade. It wasn't raining, but the humidity clung to the skin, heavy enough to feel like sweat even when you stood still. The woods were silent. No owls, no crickets, just quiet, an unnatural quiet that felt like the world knew something terrible was coming. Had the key in her hand. She didn't want it. She had tried to throw it away twice, but somehow it always found its way back, once on her windowsill, once on the floor beside her bed. She couldn't sleep. She kept seeing her brother sitting under that tree, calm, as if someone had been whispering to him, someone who thought he knew what was best for them. That afternoon, a second key showed up, this time with a note. Come find what's yours. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't have anyone left to tell. By the time night fell, she couldn't pretend anymore. She grabbed a flashlight, slipped the keys into her pocket, and walked out the door. Her heart felt too slow and too fast at the same time. She kept thinking of her brother's voice, soft and trusting, and the terror that came with knowing someone out there thought they owned her life, thought they could decide how it would turn out. She walked into the woods alone. The leaves under her feet were damp, sticking to her shoes. Branches cracked softly as she pushed through, and every time she stopped, she could swear she heard breathing, but it was never hers. She kept going until she saw it. A cabin. The same one people whispered about. Leaning, broken, swallowed by the dark. She raised her flashlight and saw something else, light coming from inside, faint, flickering, like someone didn't care if they were seen anymore. She didn't call out, she didn't run. She moved forward, shaking, knowing this was already too far to undo. Inside the cabin, someone else was already there. He stood near the door, holding a gun. His face was drawn, hollowed out by fear. He'd gotten a note too, not a key, but words scratched into paper. Debt must be paid. He thought he could stop it, thought if he faced the man in the woods, it would end. Every lie, every threat, every twisted act of help. He wasn't expecting to walk in. Neither of them spoke at first. Their eyes met, and in that moment they both understood. They were already trapped in someone else's plan. The door creaked shut behind them. The man they'd been afraid of, Robin Hood, the ghost in the trees, finally stepped into the light. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't wild or dirty or raving. He looked ordinary, calm, like someone who believed every choice he made was the right one. He spoke softly. That somehow made it worse. He told them he had been helping them, saving them, that everything he did was for them. He said the world forgot people like them, people lost in debt, grief, loneliness. He said he had done more good for them than anyone else ever would. Raised the gun, his hand wasn't steady. His voice cracked when he spoke. He told the man to stop talking, to stop controlling them, to let them go. The man didn't stop. He moved closer, not fast, just a step. Confident, untouched by fear, he said wouldn't shoot because owed him, because deep down he was grateful. Fired. The sound ripped through the woods, sharp and jarring. Birds took flight somewhere in the darkness. The gunshot echoed long after it stopped. But didn't hit him. He hit. She fell hard, the force knocking her backward against the wall. Her flashlight dropped, rolling onto the floor, spinning until its beam caught the edge of her face. Eyes wide, stunned, breath coming in fast, shallow bursts. She pressed her hand to her side and it came away wet. Froze, the man didn't. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, and took the gun from shaking hand. No fight, no struggle. Was already broken, staring at, whispering her name over and over like that was enough to pull her back. The man crouched beside, not to help, just to watch. His eyes were cold, curious, detached, like he was observing something he'd planned all along. He leaned close and whispered something to her, something couldn't hear, something meant only for her. She tried to push away, but she was too weak. Her voice came out choked, raw, barely a breath. Please stop. He stood up and turned to. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply told that this was what happened when people fought the help they were given, that some lives had to be broken so others could be saved, that he was teaching them. Snapped. He grabbed the flashlight, swung it, and hit the man across the face. The light cracked, glass shattered. The man stumbled, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. But he didn't run, didn't scream, he just smiled. A slow, awful smile that said, I've already won. The fight was messy, desperate. Two men, one blinded by guilt, the other consumed by control. Wood splintered, furniture fell, fists hit flesh. The gun slid across the floor, disappearing under a broken chair. It ended when shoved the man hard enough that he fell, hitting his head against the stone fireplace. The sound was sharp, final. He didn't get up. Stood there panting, chest heaving, hands shaking so hard he couldn't feel them. He didn't know if the man was dead. He didn't care. He crawled toward, whispering apologies, choking on his breath, trying to stop the bleeding with his hands. She was slipping away, her eyes glassy, her skin turning pale. Stay awake, he begged. Please, please stay awake. But she was already fatting. Outside, the forest stayed quiet. No one knew what happened in that cabin. No one saw the crash of violence or heard's last breaths. No one saw fall apart in front of a dying woman he barely knew, both of them dragged into someone else's idea of justice. When it ended, didn't run. He just sat there, covered in blood, hers, his, and the man's, staring at the floor as the night closed in around him. He didn't scream, he didn't move, he just whispered, I didn't want this. But the woods didn't answer. They never do. The cabin stayed quiet long after the violence stopped. The kind of silence that makes time feel heavy, like the world is holding its breath. By the time finally moved, the night was beginning to change. A thin gray light crept through the dirty window, cold and pale. Dawn didn't bring peace. It only brought clarity, and every detail of what happened came crashing back. Was gone, her body was still. Her eyes were still open. Her hand had slipped away from his. And the man they feared, Robin Hood, the one who said he was helping, lay motionless near the fireplace, blood pooling slowly around his head. Stood up weak, lightheaded, shaking so hard he had to lean against the wall. His shirt was soaked, his hands stained dark. He stared at the scene in front of him and kept telling himself he didn't mean for this to happen. He didn't mean to hurt her. He didn't even know her, not really. But the guilt didn't care about what he meant. It only cared that she was dead. He walked out of the cabin, leaving the door open behind him. The world outside was quiet again, like the woods had gone back to sleep, pretending nothing had happened. The leaves were wet. The air felt colder, and the sky was beginning to brighten, mocking the darkness that still clung to him. He kept walking until he reached the road, then fell to his knees. He didn't run. He didn't try to hide. He stayed there until a passing truck slowed and the driver jumped out, shouting his name, asking what happened, calling someone, anyone for help. The sheriff arrived first, sirens cutting through the morning. He looked at and didn't ask many questions. He didn't need to. The blood said enough. Was handcuffed, put in the back of the car, and taken away before he had the chance to say a word that mattered. The news spread fast. Someone found's brother at home, unaware that his sister was gone. He asked where she was. No one could answer him without their voice breaking. He cried until his face turned red, then kept crying until there was nothing left but silence. The town changed overnight. People who once spoke softly now whispered even quieter. Neighbors locked their doors in daylight. Parents kept their kids inside. The legend of Robin Hood, this strange, haunting figure who gave cash and control in equal measure, was no longer just a story. It was a warning. And the warning came too late. For days, people talked about it like they were afraid to say anything too loud. Some said was crazy. Others said he was manipulated, pushed past his breaking point. Some blamed, said she shouldn't have gone into the woods alone, that she should stayed home, as if that would saved her. No one dared talk about the man, the one who started it all, the one who watched people fall apart and thought he was doing something righteous. When the sheriff revealed his body was found in the cabin, too, some people felt relieved, others felt cheated. There was no trial, no answers, no real justice, just death. Sat in a cell, staring at the wall, not sleeping, not eating much. He didn't ask for a lawyer at first. He just kept repeating the same thing. I was trying to stop him, but there was no way to separate his intentions from the blood on his hands. He had pulled the trigger. He had killed even if he hadn't meant to. Reporters came, first from nearby towns, then bigger ones. They called it the Robin Hood murder. They said it was a story of desperation, of twisted savior fantasies, of broken people pushed too far. They tried to make sense of it, but their headlines were empty. The truth didn't fit neatly into any of their words. Stayed with a distant relative. He barely spoke. Some nights he stood at the window, staring at the trees, waiting for someone to come back, someone who told him he was safe, someone who lied. The sheriff carried the weight of it, too. He'd seen signs, he'd heard whispers, but he hadn't acted soon enough. The guilt settled into him like a second skin. He drove out to the cabin one morning and stood in the doorway for a long time, looking at the dried blood, the broken glass, the shattered flashlight. It wasn't a crime scene anymore. It was a grave. People who once praised the mystery man now hated him. They tore down every story they once told. They called him a sick mind, a manipulator, a predator. But they never said his real name. They didn't want to. Names make things real. Easier to blame a shadow than a man who once walked among them. Some still wondered if he meant well, if he thought he was helping, if the world pushed him into becoming something twisted. But those thoughts died quickly. Intention doesn't clean blood off the floor. The town went back to normal in the way places do after tragedy, slow, uneven, pretending until it feels real. But the air stayed heavy, the woods stayed quiet, and the stories didn't stop, they just changed. People said the cabin was haunted now, that if you went there at night you could still hear his voice begging for help, or crying, or footsteps in the leaves, slow and steady like someone was still watching. His trial came months later. He didn't fight the charges, he didn't cry, he just told the truth, flat and hollow like it belonged to someone else. He said he wasn't a hero, he wasn't even sure he was a victim. He said he made a choice, a terrible one, and he would carry it forever. He was sentenced, and when they took him away, he didn't look back. The town didn't hold a memorial for it, not at first. It was too raw, too full of blame. Some people didn't know her well enough, some felt guilty for never helping her. It took time, too much time, before they finally stood together, lit candles, and spoke her name out loud, under the open sky with voices that shook, because she deserved more than to be remembered as a victim caught between two broken men. Spoke last, he didn't say much, just that she was good and she tried, and he missed her. In the weeks that followed, people drifted back into their routines. The diner opened every morning. The thrift shop stayed open. The woods stayed still. But things weren't the same. Trust was thinner. People were slower to accept kindness, slower to believe in quiet miracles. They'd seen how easily help could turn into control. Sometimes at night, when fog rolls low over the ground, people swear they see movement near the trees. A figure watching from the edge. Not helping, not hurting, just watching. But no one goes looking. Not anymore. In the end, the aftermath of the crime revealed a harsh truth. Justice is rarely clean, and it is never simple. Some of those involved faced legal consequences, trials, sentencing, public exposure, while others managed to escape punishment through influence, silence, or technical loopholes. For a few, prison walls became the final chapter of their downfall. For others, the true punishment was internal, a lifelong battle with guilt, nightmares, and the irreversible loss of who they once were. Their reputations, once polished and admired, now lay shattered, replaced by shame, isolation, and the haunting knowledge that the truth could no longer be buried. Even those not directly responsible found their lives permanently changed. Families broke under pressure, friendships dissolved, and people who once felt safe in their identities were forced to confront the darkness at their own doorstep. The question of whether justice was truly served lingers, unanswered, because legal verdicts do not erase trauma, nor do they fully reflect the depths of moral consequence. Beyond the individuals, the crime rippled outward, reshaping the entire community. Overnight, a place once defined by routine normalcy became synonymous with fear and suspicion. Neighbors stopped trusting one another. Parents held their children closer. Conversations became whispers. The media descended like vultures, some searching for truth, others feeding the public's hunger for sensational tragedy. Documentaries, headlines, and talk shows turned private suffering into a public spectacle. The story was dissected, debated, and sensationalized until the real people behind it became symbols, representations of failure, corruption, or cautionary fate. In time, the case even sparked discussions of reform, new laws, new systems of oversight, and fresh scrutiny of the institutions that allowed such a crime to unfold. But for many, these changes came too late. The damage was already done. At its core, the story became a reflection of deeper and timeless themes: morality under pressure, the corrupting nature of power, and the fragile line separating intent from action. Many of those involved did not believe themselves evil. They acted out of desperation, ambition, fear, and pride, fully human motives. But the crime stripped away their illusions. It revealed how easily ethics can bend, how quickly power can blind, and how fragile the moral framework truly is when tested. Some characters clung to their justifications, insisting they only did what they had to. Others broke completely, collapsing under the weight of their realization. In the end, the crime did not simply expose wrongdoing, it exposed humanity itself, capable of love and loyalty, but also deception, greed, and cruelty when survival or desire demands it. The story closes not with triumph, but with silence, the kind that follows a storm. A community tries to rebuild. Survivors learn to carry the weight of memory. The world moves on, but those closest to the truth never fully escape it. Their lives are now divided into before and after. The final lesson is not meant to comfort, but to provoke reflection. Justice, morality, guilt, power, these are not fixed, simple ideas. They shift, collide, and break beneath the pressure of human choice. And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: crime is not the work of monsters, but of people, flawed, frightened, complicated people. People we might once have trusted, people we might have been.